In an age when most teenagers are absorbed in selfies, streaming, and social media, the life of Carlo Acutis stands out like a blazing comet across the night sky of a distracted generation. Born in 1991, Carlo was very much a modern boy. He wore jeans and sneakers, loved Pokemon, played video games, and had a deep interest in computers. But while his peers were immersed in online trends, Carlo's heart was absorbed in something far greater: the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. Even as a small child, his devotion was extraordinary. At just 7 years old, he insisted on receiving daily communion, and from then on, he rarely missed Mass a single day of his life. He prayed the Rosary with the devotion of a mystic and read the lives of the saints as if they were living friends. Yet he wasn't a monk in the making, locked in his room. He was cheerful, outgoing, and had a knack for teaching his friends how to center their lives around Christ, not just in theory, but in action. He had a special love for the poor, would buy sleeping bags for the homeless, and always looked for the overlooked. But what set Carlo apart, what made his life a bridge between the Church's ancient tradition and today's digital frontier, was how he used technology. With a mind as sharp as his heart was pure, Carlo designed a website cataloging Eucharistic miracles from around the world, hoping to remind modern Catholics that Jesus is truly alive in the Blessed Sacrament. His website, still active today, continues to bring thousands closer to the altar. It is this remarkable blend of youthful joy, technological brilliance, and deep holiness that makes him not only a saint of our time, but the perfect counterpart to a message from heaven that began over a century ago in a tiny village in Portugal. Long before the world knew of Carlo Acutis or the internet ever existed, a different call from heaven echoed across a troubled world. In 1917, in the small Portuguese village of Fatima, 3 poor shepherd children, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, experienced something that would shake the Church and the world for generations. The Virgin Mary appeared to them on the 13th of each month from May to October, delivering messages not of comfort, but of urgency. Her tone was loving, yet sorrowful. The world, she said, had offended God gravely. Sin was increasing. Souls were falling into hell. Wars, persecutions, and spiritual blindness would spread unless humanity repented and turned back to God. She pleaded with the children to pray the Rosary daily, to offer sacrifices for sinners, and to foster devotion to her Immaculate Heart. The most chilling moment came during the July apparition, when the children were shown a vision of hell, souls falling like snowflakes into fire, shrieking with no hope of escape. For Francisco and Jacinta, this vision led to lives of extraordinary sacrifice despite their young age. Both would die within a few years, offering their suffering for the salvation of souls. The third secret, revealed decades later, warned of attacks on the Church, the assassination attempt on a pope, and a world in need of profound repentance. But even amid the terror, Fatima held out hope. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. What makes Fatima so enduring is that it was not a one-time historical message. It was a prophetic blueprint for every generation. Its central themes, repentance, reverence for the Eucharist, prayer, and devotion to Our Lady, are not bound by time. They are eternal truths. And while the world may have changed drastically since 1917, the human heart hasn't. Pride, sin, distraction, and indifference remain our greatest threats. Not technology itself, but how we let it replace what is sacred. In this way, the seeds planted at Fatima were waiting for someone like Carlo Acutis, someone who would take these messages and translate them into a language the digital generation could understand. What makes the life of Carlo Acutis so spiritually powerful isn't just that he lived a holy life, but that he lived the heart of Fatima's message, perhaps without even fully realizing it. Unlike saints who preached fiery sermons or wrote thick theological texts, Carlo was simple and pure. Yet in his simple daily actions, his love for the Eucharist, his Marian devotion, and his desire to save souls, he became a living embodiment of the very warnings and hopes Our Lady gave at Fatima. He didn't just study miracles, he lived in awe of them. He would say, "The Eucharist is my highway to heaven," and he treated every Mass like a direct encounter with God himself. He couldn't understand why churches were empty while soccer stadiums were full. To him, the real miracle wasn't some vision or healing, it was Jesus, hidden in the consecrated host. This mirrors Fatima's deepest plea: return to the Eucharist, to prayer, to penance. Though Carlo was only a teenager, he knew what it meant to offer sacrifice. When he was diagnosed with leukemia at 15, he didn't waste his final days in despair. He offered his sufferings for the Pope, for the Church, and for the conversion of sinners. He even refused pain medication in the final stages of his illness, saying he wanted to unite his pain with Christ on the cross. That's not just bravery, that's Fatima in action. It's Jacinta's courage, Francisco's silence, and Lucia's fidelity, reborn in a boy with a laptop and a beating heart for the Eucharist. Even his website, built to teach the world about Eucharistic miracles, feels like a modern translation of Our Lady's call for penance and belief. Instead of warning with fire and brimstone, Carlo invited others to rediscover awe, wonder at a God who humbles himself to be with us in the Blessed Sacrament. And just like the children of Fatima, Carlo burned with urgency, knowing time was short, that each moment could bring a soul closer or further from heaven. The miracles of Fatima and the miracles Carlo catalogued all point to the same truth: that heaven is real, hell is real, and our choices echo in eternity. If the core of the Fatima message was a mother's urgent plea to her children, then Carlo Acutis answered her call like a devoted son. Though he never claimed visions or heard voices, his love for the Blessed Virgin Mary was deep, deliberate, and constant. He prayed the Rosary daily, not out of obligation, but out of love. He called it the most powerful weapon we have after the Eucharist, echoing the exact language used by Lucia, the eldest Fatima visionary, who once said, "There is no problem, no matter how difficult, that cannot be resolved by praying the Rosary." Carlo didn't just pray it in private. He encouraged his friends and classmates to pray it too, often slipping it into conversation without pressure or pride. He understood what many forget, that devotion to Mary is not optional for Catholics. It's essential. And like the children of Fatima who wore coarse ropes and offered sacrifices for sinners, Carlo offered up small daily penances in silence. He skipped desserts, avoided unnecessary entertainment, and never complained when life became uncomfortable. These were not grand gestures, but the hidden sufferings that make saints and move heaven. His spiritual maturity was extraordinary. He once said, "Our goal must be the infinite, not the finite. The infinite is our homeland. Heaven has been waiting for us forever." That's not the voice of a child. That's the voice of someone who had already handed his life over to God and to Mary. And when his diagnosis came, leukemia, sudden and aggressive, he didn't protest. He simply smiled and said, "I offer all the suffering I will have to suffer for the Lord, for the Pope, and for the Church." If Fatima called the world to consecration, Carlo fulfilled that call not just with words, but with his life. He didn't need a Marian apparition to become her soldier. He became one by simply trusting her, walking beside her through the ordinary, and dying in her arms spiritually, just as he had lived under her mantle. In an age where devotion is often dismissed as outdated, Carlo's childlike love for Mary stands as a radiant example. He didn't treat her like a theological concept, he treated her like a real mother. And in doing so, he lived the very heart of Fatima's message in a language his generation could understand. When Carlo Acutis is canonized, it won't just be a moment for saints' calendars or Vatican records, it will be a jolt to the heart of a digital generation desperate for meaning. In a world overflowing with influencers, Carlo will stand as a different kind of icon, one who used technology not for self-glory, but to lead others to Christ. His canonization will mark the Church's first millennial saint, a teenager who died just before the rise of Facebook and the iPhone, yet whose legacy now lives on in memes, websites, and viral videos. But more than that, it may very well reignite interest in the one message the world has tried hardest to ignore: Fatima. Carlo didn't need to preach fire from pulpits. He lit hearts on fire through gentle witness and Eucharistic devotion. He didn't rewrite doctrine. He lived it with joy. And he didn't chase fame. Yet now, millions know his name. His canonization doesn't just celebrate a life well lived. It signals something greater. It says to young people, you are not too young to be holy. You are not too modern to be faithful. You are not too late to answer Mary's call. The message of Fatima is one of prayer, penance, and personal conversion, three things often dismissed by modern culture. But Carlo embraced them without theatrics. He prayed the Rosary while coding. He fasted quietly. He went to confession weekly. He sanctified the ordinary. That is exactly what Our Lady asked for at Fatima. Not flashy conversions, but faithful hearts. And in that way, Carlo becomes more than just another saint. He becomes a mirror reflecting back to us what Fatima was always about: the salvation of souls, the urgency of holiness, and the reality that heaven is not a fairy tale, but a choice we make every day. As young people flock to Rome or tune in online to witness his canonization, they will see more than a boy in jeans and a halo. They will see the living fruit of Fatima, proof that Mary's warnings were not just for 1917, but for right now. Carlo Acutis once said, "Sadness is looking at ourselves, happiness is looking at God." And that simple truth may be the key to unlocking everything Fatima warned us about and everything Carlo quietly lived. In a world drowning in self-obsession, comparison, and spiritual fatigue, the solution isn't reinvention, it's rediscovery. Rediscovery of the Eucharist, rediscovery of the Rosary, rediscovery of Our Lady's call to holiness, sacrifice, and reparation. That's what Fatima was about. That's what Carlo lived for. His canonization isn't just the Church's celebration of a life well lived. It's heaven's loud whisper to a sleeping world. Wake up. There is still time. Carlo didn't just create a Eucharistic website. He built a digital roadmap back to wonder. He didn't just pray the Rosary. He lived it with joy, treating Our Lady like the mother she truly is. He didn't just go to Mass. He centered his entire life around it. And in doing all this, he made holiness possible again for the ordinary person, especially the young. As we look ahead to the years beyond his canonization, one thing becomes clear. Carlo's legacy may be what finally brings Fatima back to the forefront, not as history, but as prophecy fulfilled. In him, we see a living echo of the shepherd children's courage. In him, we hear Mary's cry for prayer, purity, and peace, spoken in a new language. Not Latin, not Portuguese, but the universal language of a young heart on fire for God. The triumph of the Immaculate Heart won't come with thunder or politics. It will come through souls like Carlo, who walk quietly, love deeply, suffer joyfully, and give everything to God without counting the cost. And so, perhaps the final word belongs not to us, but to him. "If we get in front of the sun," Carlo once said, "we get suntans. But when we get in front of Jesus in the Eucharist, we become saints." He became one. Now it's our turn.